I walked past her every single day on my commute. My name's Emily Carter. I'm 32, and I work as a product manager at a tech firm here in Boston. I moved out from California a year ago to get away from a broken marriage and start a quieter life. I live on the third floor of a brownstone apartment building. Downstairs runs an old commercial strip. There's an Irish pub, a Chinese restaurant, a dry cleaner that's been shut down for half a year, and a tiny shoe repair spot. Every single morning, an older woman rolls it out from the side alley and parks it next to a fire punk. She never makes a sound. Her name is Maria Santos. She's in her 60s, with gray hair braided into one long plant. She never speaks, and I'd later find out why. She's deaf and mute. I walked past her every single day on my commute, yet I never once stopped to say hello. Then one autumn day, I watched her kneel on the sidewalk, picking up loose nails one by one and tucking them back into a metal tin. That night, I leaned against my apartment window and looked down. Her cart was still parked under a street lamp, and she sat on a tiny stool stitching a leather shoe. The light was dim, so she hotched forward close to her work. I couldn't help wondering, what time does she pack up each night? Where does she live? Does she have any family? It took me 3 whole years to get all those answers. Tuesday, a notice went up downstairs on the street. It was a yellow piece of paper, taped to a utility pole. I stood in front of it and read it twice. Then I glanced over at Maria. She hadn't looked at the notice. Maybe she'd seen it and couldn't understand the words. Or maybe she got it, but had no clue what to do next. I walked over, knelt down, and pointed at the yellow paper. She lifted her head. Her eyes were dark brown and bright, ringed with heavy bags underneath. She glanced where I was pointing, then back at me. She pulled a beat-up notebook and a pencil out of her apron pocket, scrabbled a line, and held it out for me to read. I took the pencil and wrote on her page, "Where will you go?" She stared at the question for a long time. Then she wrote one short line, "I don't know." Those 3 words weighed on me so heavy I could barely breathe for the rest of the day. Then why are you going out of your way to help her? Back at work, I sat at my desk, zoning out in front of my computer screen. My boss, a middle-aged guy named David, walked over and tapped my desk.
Emily, where's the client proposal?
I'll have it for you tomorrow.
You've said tomorrow 3 times already.
I ignored him. He walked away. My coworker and best friend Sarah set a cup of coffee down on my desk. "What's wrong with you?" "The deaf shoe repair lady downstairs is getting kicked out." "So what?" "So I want to help her." "How much do you even know about her?"
Nothing at all.
"Then why are you going out of your way to help her?" Her question caught me off guard. Yeah, why exactly? We've never spoken a word, never shaken hands. I don't know if she has kids, a husband, or even where she lives. But there's one thing I know for sure. She sets up her stall at 7 every morning and packs up at 8 every night. Rain or snow, she's always there. Her hands are covered in frostbite scars and burn marks. Her notebook is almost full, yet her handwriting is always neat and careful. I've known her for 3 years. I've barely said more than 10 words to her in all that time. But I know her. Because she's the hardest working person on this street. So what do you plan to do? I froze. She knew who I was. She'd known me all along. That afternoon, I left work early and headed over to Maria's stall. She was packing up for the day. She placed her hammer, sewing kit, glue, and shoe last one by one into a green plastic box. Everything had its fixed spot. She could reach for any of them blindfolded. I knelt down, pulled out my phone, opened the Notes app, and typed a question for her to read. "What's your name?" She glanced at my screen, pulled a small notebook out of her pocket, and wrote down, "Maria Santos." I typed again, "I'm Emily." She wrote back, "I know. You live on the 3rd floor, you come down at 7:45 every morning in your black coat, and you have a gray cat." I froze. She knew who I was. She'd known me all along. I wrote, "How do you know all this about me?" She simply wrote, "I've watched you for 3 years." Tears welled up in my eyes. For 3 years, I'd walked past her, nodded, and smiled, yet never once stopped to ask her name. But she'd memorized my schedule, my coat, even my cat. I wrote in her notebook, "I'm so sorry." She replied, "It's okay. So many people just walk right by. Your nods mean more than you think. I'm going to help you." The next day, I didn't head straightly to work. I stopped by her stall and sat down on the small stool right next to her. She was mending a pair of red high heels with a broken heel. Her fingers moved the needle and thread so fast and fluidly that I could barely keep up with her movements. I wrote in the notebook, "How did you end up in the States?" She wrote back, "Guatemala, 30 years ago." "Did you come alone?" "I brought my daughter. She was only 2. Her dad had passed away." I froze with my pen hovering over the page. A deaf and mute woman traveled all the way from Guatemala to Boston with a 2-year-old toddler. She had no way to communicate, no money, no family at all. "How did you make it through?" I wrote. She replied, "Shoe repair. My dad taught me. He was the best cobbler in the village." It was the first time I'd ever seen her smile in 3 years. "What about your daughter now?"
She's in college, senior year. She goes to Boston University, studying nursing.
She wrote Boston University extra neatly, tracing each letter carefully, as if she was afraid I wouldn't be able to read it clearly. I closed the notebook and stood up. "I'm going to help you." She couldn't hear my voice, but she read my lips. More and more people started sharing it online. I decided to start an online petition. It wasn't about fighting city halls. It was about making them listen, to Maria, and to everyone on this street who'd grown used to having her stall here. Sarah helped me set up the page. I spent the whole night writing the body of the petition. I wrote about Maria's 30 years of consistent work, how she'd put her daughter through college, and how the neighborhood elders only trusted her careful stitching and repairs. I attached several photos, her weathered hands, her tool cart, and the neat handwriting in her notebook. The petition went live. On the first day, it gained 120 signatures. On the second day, 400. On the third day, 1,200. More and more people started sharing it online. People shared it on Facebook, and others tagged the Boston mayor on Twitter. A reporter from a local community website even wrote a feature story. One person commented. Another wrote. Others asked, "Where can I donate to help?" I replied, "Donations aren't needed. What we need is a decision to let her stay."
Ma'am, rules are rules. If she can't provide a valid permit within 15 days...
On the 7th day of the petition, everything fell apart. Someone filed a complaint against Maria's stall. It wasn't a neighbor, nor a local business owner. It was another street vendor. A hot dog vendor resented Maria for occupying the best spot on the block, and he wanted the space for his friend's stall instead. The police showed up. 2 uniformed officers stood in front of her tool cart. Maria looked up at them, completely confused about what was happening. I was just coming back from work. The second I saw the scene, I rushed straight over. Officers, what's going on?
We received a complaint that this stall is blocking the sidewalk. We need to see her vendor permit.
She can't hear you. She's deaf and mute. Let me talk to her. I knelt down and wrote in Maria's notebook. The police are here. They're asking for your vendor permit. Maria's face dropped. She wrote back, I don't have one. For 30 years, she'd worked this street without a single permit. She doesn't have a permit, but she's been working this exact spot for 30 years. Is there any way you can cut her some slack?
Ma'am, rules are rules. If she can't provide a valid permit within 15 days, this stall has to be removed, and she may face a fine.
I begged them for 10 minutes, but nothing changed their minds. They wrote a ticket and left. Maria stared at the ticket with a look I'd never seen on her face before. It wasn't anger, and it wasn't sorrow. It was fear. She wrote in her notebook, How much is it? I wrote back, $500. She wrote, I can't afford that. Then she hung her head and started packing up her stall 2 hours earlier than usual. Sophia, I'm going to help your mom. That night, my phone rang. It was an unknown number.
Hi, is this Emily Carter?
Yes, it is.
My name is Sofia Santos. Maria's my mom.
Her voice sounded young, with a soft Spanish accent.
My mom texted me. She types really slowly, but she wrote me a long message this time. She said someone helped her. That someone is you.
I just did what I thought was right.
You did what no one else has ever done. My whole mom's life, no one has ever stopped to ask her name. No one.
When do you graduate?
Next May. I still have 10 months left.
Do you want to come home?
I want to. My mom's been alone for so long, but she won't let me. She insists I finish school first.
I held my phone and stared out the window at the street. Under the streetlights, Maria's tool cart was gone. She'd packed up early, definitely scared of running into the sparch again. Sophia, I'm going to help your mom. Don't worry.
Thank you. My mom deserves to be seen.
There is one thing we can do, though.
The next day, I headed down to the community board office. They host an open public meeting once a month where locals can bring up any neighborhood issues they care about. The meeting room was set up in a church basement, lined with long tables, folding chairs, and free coffee laid out for everyone. Around 30 people showed up, most of them elderly neighborhood residents. I waited in line for 20 minutes, and when my turn came, I stepped up to the microphone. My name is Emily Carter. I live on Grant Street, and I'm here to talk about the local shoe repair cart. I told everyone Maria's whole story. 30 years working the street, deaf and mute, raising her daughter all on her own, and her kids now a nursing student at Boston University. For a few seconds after I finished speaking, the whole room fell silent.
Then an elderly woman raised her hand. She was well into her 80s, leaning on a cane, and struggled to stand up slowly. That cobbler lady, she fixed my late husband's shoes. It's been 7 years since he passed, and I still keep those shoes. She's the only one who could ever fix them right.
She replaced zippers for me once. My hands shake too bad to fix stuff myself, and she never overcharged me a single cent.
She can't speak a word, yet she's far more polite than plenty of people who can talk nonstop.
Patricia, the middle-aged woman who chaired the community board, listened carefully to every person's testimony.
Miss Carter, We don't have the authority to reverse the city's ruling. There is one thing we can do, though. Draft an official joint letter asking the City Council to hold a public hearing.
I'll write the letter.
But she also mends pieces of our lives.
I spent 2 full days drafting the community letter. It wasn't a casual note. It was a formal, professionally structured letter backed by official legal provisions. I cited Boston's rarely known Historic Vendor Protection Ordination, a special clause that allows city-approved preservation for small street stalls with long-standing cultural value to the community under specific conditions. I printed out the finalized letter and brought it to the community meeting to collect signatures from everyone present. Over 50 people showed up that day, including local residents, neighborhood business owners, and regular street visitors. After each person signed their name, I added a note next to their signature to clarify their connection to Maria. Customer, neighbor, longtime friend.
One young woman came with a pair of tiny baby shoes in her hands.
These are my daughter's very first pair of shoes. Maria stitched the shoelaces extra sturdy for her, and my daughter wore them all summer long. I brought these here today to show everyone. She repairs shoes, but she also mends pieces of our lives.
I took a photo of the baby shoes and sent it along with the signed community letter to the City Council and also carbon copied the Boston Globe. 3 days later, a reporter called me. The article told Maria's full life story. The reporter from a newspaper was named James. He was in his 50s with grating hair and a rough, husky voice.
Emily, this story really resonates with me. Would it be okay if I come out and interview you and Maria?
Maria is deaf and mute. She can only communicate through writing.
That's completely fine. I'll bring a writing tablet to communicate with her.
James showed up that afternoon. He sat quietly at Maria's stall for the entire day. He didn't rush into questions right away. Instead, he simply observed. He watched how she stitched the shoes, how she read her customers' expressions, and how she wrote patiently in her notebook. Afterwards, he pulled out his writing tablet and jotted down a question. "May I take your photograph?" Maria hesitated for a brief moment, then nodded gently in agreement. James took one single photograph. Maria sitting behind her tool cart, holding a worn-out leather shoe with her needle and thread suspended midair. Her braid fell softly over her shoulders, and her apron was covered in glue stains and loose threads from years of work. Behind her stretched the overcast, gray sky of Boston. The story was published soon after, taking up an entire full page of the newspaper. The article told Maria's full life story, featured her daughter Sophia, covered the community's joint letter, and documented the petition I started. In the final paragraph, James wrote, "In Boston, we've torn down too many oldings and pushed away too many small street vendors. We always believed we were beautifying this city. But we've forgotten that a city's beauty isn't only found in glass and concrete skyscrapers. It also lives in a pair of calloused hands, stitching our broken memories back together, one thread at a time." The article went viral and was reposted countless times across local media and social platforms.
You've stirred up quite a story around here.
The day after the article came out, City Councilor Kevin O'Brien showed up on Grant Street. He was an Irish-American man in his 50s, with a round face, red hair, and a thick Boston accent. He stood in front of Maria's stall and observed it quietly for a long time.
You're Emily?
"Yes, that's me."
You've stirred up quite a story around here.
"I just wanted to make sure a hardworking person doesn't get pushed out." He knelt down, took a close look at Maria's tool cart, then pulled a business card out of his pocket and handed it to her.
This is City Councilor Kevin O'Brien.
"He came here to see you." Maria wrote back, "Why?" I replied in writing, "Because he can help you." She wrote again, "Help me with what?" I wrote clearly, "He can help you stay here." Maria stared at the words on the page, then looked up at Councilston O'Brien. She then stood up, walked to the back of her tool cart, and pulled out a small paper box. From inside, she took out a tiny pair of white baby shoes, faded slightly yellow with age. She handed the shoes to O'Brien and wrote in her notebook, "These are my daughter's first shoes. I made them myself 30 years ago. She's a student at Boston University now." O'Brien stared at the tiny shoes and fell into a long, thoughtful silence.
Emily, I'm going to file a motion at City Council. We're keeping this stall, and we're naming it an official community cultural heritage site.
I agree.
The City Council hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I was swamped almost every single day over those 14 days. I helped Maria put together a written statement. She couldn't speak it aloud, so everything was written out by her hand. I printed it out and blew up the font size big and clear to display during the hearing. Sarah reached out to a legal aid clinic for me, and they assigned a pro bono lawyer to sort out all our legal paperwork. The lawyer's name was Michael. He'd just graduated law school, yet he took our case incredibly seriously. On the day of the hearing, I walked with Maria down to City Hall. She wore a dark navy coat, her nicest piece of clothing that she almost never brought out.
She'd redone her braids, too, tight and neat without a single loose strand. The council chamber was far bigger than I'd pictured.
13 city council members sat behind a long, formal table. The public gallery was packed full. Our local neighbors, newspaper reporters, and townsfolk who'd come out to watch. O'Brien went up to speak first. He laid out Maria's whole story, held up the pair of old baby shoes for everyone to see, and read aloud the community joint letter.
This isn't a citation over an unlicensed cart. This is a matter of human dignity.
Then it was Maria's turn to address the council. She stood to her feet, holding up a blank whiteboard she'd prepared. Written across it read, "My name is Marias. I came from Guatemala. I've mended shoes for 30 years. All I ask is one chance to work here without being chased away." She held the board up for a long moment, and the entire chamber fell completely silent.
I vote to let her stay.
I agree.
The motion passed unanimously. Maria couldn't follow what had just happened until I scribbled on paper for her, "You won. You get to keep your stall here." She stared down on the words, and silent tears began streaming down her face. She ran her palm along the brand new brick wall. Right after the hearing wrapped out, O'Brien held a small press conference outside City Hall. He brought Maria up to the mic, but she couldn't voice a single word. She held up her white board, and it read, "Thank you, Boston." That photo made the front page of the evening paper that same day. City officials showed up bright and early the next morning. They measured the spot where her stall sat and told her they'd build her a proper permanent booth, not just a rolling cart. It would have power, heating, and a built-in workbench. Maria stood right on the spot and watched the construction crew mark lines and lay the foundation. She ran her palm along the brand new brick wall, then traced the cracks between the bricks with her fingertip. She wrote in her notebook, "Is this real?" I wrote back, "It's real. This place is yours now." She wrote another line, "How much rent will I pay?" I told her in writing, "It's completely free. The city is giving this to you as restitution." She scribbled down, "Why would they do this for me?" I simply wrote, "Because you deserve every bit of it." She stood motionless in that spot for a very long time. The crisp October Boston wind loosened her braids, yet she made no move to tuck her hair back. She shut her eyes and tilted her face up toward the sunlight. It looked like she was listening. She can't hear sound, of course, but she could feel everything around her.
Then find a developer to build it for you.
The new booth was finally finished. It had white walls, a blue roofed, and clear glass windows. A neat official sign hung at the entrance, "Santos Shoe Repair Community Cultural Heritage." But there was still one problem. Maria couldn't hear, so she could never answer phone calls. Plenty of customers wanted her service, but no one knew her business hours. She didn't have a cellophone. not because she couldn't afford one, but because she didn't know how to use it. I brought up the issue with Sarah at work one day. It would be perfect if there was an app. Customers could upload photos of their shoes, and Maria could take orders just by looking at the pictures.
Then why don't you build one?
I'm a product manager, not a software developer.
Then find a developer to build it for you.
That's when I thought of Benjamin, my coworker and former college roommate. He was a coding genius, incredibly skilled at his job, but extremely reserved. He had one of the lowest social scores in the whole company. We rarely talked at work, but I knew he had a kind heart underneath his quiet exterior. I knocked gently on his cubicle divider. Ben, I need your help.
What do you need?
I want to build an app for deaf and mute street predators to take customer orders.
I'll do it.
You're not even going to ask for details?
No need. I'll take any project that helps people with disabilities.
Why is that?
My older sister is on the autism spectrum. She's always struggled finding work.
I spent an entire week teaching her the basics. Benjamin and I built the app in our spare time. I handled all the product design, while he took care of the coding work. We stayed late at the office every night, ordering takeout and going back and forth over every tiny product detail. I spent a long time brainstorming the perfect name for the app.
Let's call it Silent Craft.
The first version was extremely bare-scone. It only had basic features: user sign-up, photo uploads, issue descriptions, and order submission. On the vendor side, people could view an order list and reply with price quotes and pickup times. There was no payment system, no reviews, and no customer support. It was simply a tool to connect customers and vendors. I showed the finished app to Maria. She had no experience using smartphones, so I bought her the most affordable Android device I could find. It had a large screen and a simple, minimal layout. I spent an entire week teaching her the basics: how to take photos, type text, and reply to messages. She learned at a slow pace. She often took blurry photos and made frequent typos while typing, but she never gave up. Every night after closing her stall, she stayed inside her booth and practiced on the phone over and over again. One night, I walked past the booth and saw her sitting there all alone, her face softly lit by the glow of her phone screen. She was practicing typing. She'd type one word, delete it, and type it again, repeating the process nonstop. I didn't interrupt her peaceful moment. The next morning, she proudly showed me her phone screen. On the screen was a fully submitted reply: "Can fix, $10, pick up tomorrow afternoon." She did it. She had just sent out the very first online message of her life. Residents from all the surrounding blocks downloaded the app too. Our very first order came from a guy in his 20s. The sole of his hiking boot had split apart, so he snapped a photo and uploaded it to the app. Maria sent over her price quote, and he accepted it right away. He stopped by to pick up his shoes the next afternoon. Maria had already finished the repair. She spread the glue evenly and left the shoe clamped overnight. The young man slipped the boot on to test it out and broke into a smile. He left the very first review on Silent Craft. I took a screenshot of the review and showed it to Maria. She stared at the screen for a long while, then gestured to ask what the customer had written. She studied the words once more, then wrote just one single character: "Good." Word about Silent Craft spread all through the neighborhood after that day. At first, only a dozen people used it, then dozens more, and soon hundreds of locals signed up. It wasn't just folks from Grant Street. Residents from all the surrounding blocks downloaded the app too. Maria's order volume doubled compared to before. She stayed busy working until 9 o'clock every single night before closing up. Still, she never complained. She found herself smiling far more often these days. "I'll find a job here and never leave you again." Sophia came home right before Thanksgiving. She's a senior in college now, doing her clinical rotation at a hospital. She took 3 days off just to come visit her mom. By the time I got to the shoe booth, she was already inside. She sat right next to Maria, and the two chatted back and forth with pens and a writing tablet. Sophia didn't know sign language, but she wrote really fast.
Sister Emily.
When Sophia spotted me, she called me sister. Not ma'am, not Miss Carter, just sister.
Your mom's incredible. I know. I didn't get it before. When I was little, I was embarrassed she couldn't talk. When my classmates walked home with me, she couldn't say hi to them, and I'd get so mad. Now I realize she's the bravest person alive.
Maria saw her daughter crying and reached up to wipe her tears. Her hands were rough as sandpaper, yet her touch was unbelievably gentle.
"Mom, I'm moving back after graduation. I'll find a job here and never leave you again."
Tears started rolling down Maria's cheeks too. "Your daughter's home to stay." It was just a single word, yet she lit up with a smile as bright as a 20-year-old girl. This app was never meant to make money. As our app's user base grew, new issues started popping up. First, there was no built-in payment system. Customers paid in cash when picking up their shoes, but most people rarely carry these days. Second, there was no order tracking feature. Users had no way of knowing whether their shoes were finished or not. Third, the review system was way too basic. It only supported text, with no option to upload photos. We need to roll out a new iteration.
Our users jumped from 50 to 300. The servers are barely holding on.
So what's the plan to fix it?
I'll upgrade the servers, but it's going to take some time.
Are there any other issues we're missing?
We're getting downloads from people in other cities too. They want to use the app, but we don't support their areas yet.
Then we open source the code.
Open source?
Yep. We release the code publicly. Let anyone use it and deploy it on their own.
Are you sure about this?
I'm sure. This app was never meant to make money. He thought it over for 3 full documentation.
All right. I'll write the official documentation.
The number suddenly jumped to 100. We uploaded all of SilentCraft's source code to GitHub. Benjamin wrote thorough technical documentation and even recorded a tutorial video walking people through the deployment process step by step. We posted an announcement on social media, but after we posted it, there was total radio silence. On the first day, we only got 3 stars. The second day, just 5. Then on the third day, the number suddenly jumped to 100. A user named Dave the Dev opened a new issue. Benjamin replied right away. He pushed the new feature live just 1 week later. Within a month, more than a dozen developers were actively contributing code on GitHub. What touched me the most was a deaf watch repairman from Chicago. He deployed our app on his own and renamed it Silent Watch. He sent us a private message on GitHub. I took a screenshot of his message and showed it to Maria. She read it carefully and wrote on her book, "Yes, he is." I wrote back. She wrote one final line. She kept scrolling through the fake orders on her phone. 3 weeks after we open-sourced the app, we faced our first real crisis. Someone was flooding the platform with fake orders. Over 30 fraudulent orders came from the exact same IP address. Maria's booth was completely swamped with these fake requests. She had no way to tell which orders were real and which ones were fake. As soon as Benjamin caught on to the attack, he stayed up all night adding verification codes and a user blacklist function. But the damage was already done. Maria had wasted 2 whole days replying to fake orders without serving a single real customer. When I went to check on her, Maria was sitting quietly inside the booth, unable to work. She kept scrolling through the fake orders on her phone, lost and unsure what to do. They're all fake. Just ignore them. There are cruel people in this world. I had no words to comfort her. I reached out and held her hand, which was trembling nonstop. That night I posted on social media. That night has been targeted by fake imitate was deceived. Hundreds of comments poured in under the post. Pay no mind to upload as awful people. You're so much better than them. Someone even uploaded a photo of a pair of perfectly repaired shoes with the words, "Thank you, Maria," written beside them. I copied every single comment down in her notebook one by one and showed it to her the next day. She read through all the messages 3 times. Finally, she wrote, "This is enough. I'm not afraid anymore."
Please join me in welcoming Maria Santos.
Councillor O'Brien invited me to a charity gala themed
Emily, I'd be honored if you and Maria would join us.
Boston's small businesses and community culture, and he wanted me to bring Maria along too. I asked Maria if she'd like to come. She wrote on her tablet, "You won't embarrass anyone. When you show up, people get to know the real you. Seeing you matters far more than hearing you talk." She thought it over for a long time, then wrote, "Only if Sophia comes with me." Sophia drove over specially from Boston University that night, wearing a simple black dress with soft, subtle makeup. She picked out a bright red blouser and a matching scarf for Maria to wear. Maria stood in front of the mirror and gently brushed her fingers across her own cheeks. "You look beautiful, Mom." Absolutely. The gala was held in a ballroom at a hotel close to Boston Park. Over 200 guests showed up, including local business owners, politicians, journalists, and community leaders. While O'Brien delivered his speech from the stage, he brought up Maria's story.
We have a very special guest with us tonight. She cannot speak a word, yet her craftsmanship has spoken for 30 years. Please join me in welcoming Maria Santos.
Spotlights locked onto Maria. She stood to her feet as every set of eyes turned towards her. Her palms grew slip with nervous sweat, and Sophia squished her hand tight to comfort her. Then Maria did something no one in the room expected. She lifted up her white writing board high. The entire room rose to their feet and erupted in loud applause. I stood off in the corner, watching Maria bathed in stage lights, and tears rolled down my cheeks. She held the board high above her head and turned all the way around for the whole crowd to see. Sophia graduated this May. The commencement ceremony was held in a huge auditorium at Boston University. Maria sat front row in the audience, wearing that red blouser she'd gotten for the charity gala. She clutched a framed photo of Sophia when she was a little kid in her hands. I sat right beside her. She kept staring down at the frame and never glanced up at the stage. When Sophia walked across the stage to pick up her diploma, Maria still wouldn't lift her head. Tears started rolling down her face, and she didn't wipe them away, just let them stream down her cheeks. I tapped her arm gently and gestured toward the stage to get her attention. She finally looked up. Sophia stood there in her cap and gown and waved straight at her mom. Maria waved back, using her free hand to brush away her tears. As soon as the ceremony wrapped up, Sophia ran over and threw her arms around Maria. She whispered a line right into Maria's ear. Maria couldn't hear a word of it, but Sophia said it anyway. "Thank you, Mom." She held the board high above her head and turned all the way around for the whole crowd to see. Hundreds of people spotted the sign, Lot smiled, and Plenty teared up watching them. I snapped a photo of the moment, Maria holding up the whiteboard, Sophia linked arm in arm with her in graduation regalia, both grinning ear to ear. That photo ended up running in the weekend edition of the Boston Globe. The headline read, 32 Years of a Deaf Mother's Journey. Maria, you didn't just fix a pair of shoes. You mended our precious memories. As our app continued to grow, we started receiving more and more heartfelt messages from users. One day, I came across a message from a user named Miriam. I showed the message to Maria. She stared at the name Miriam for a very long time. Then she wrote on her tablet. I messaged Miriam back. Maria remembers you. She remembers every single detail. Soon after, Miriam came to visit. She brought the old shoes with her, along with her daughter, once a 15-year-old girl, now a 27-year-old bride. The bride wore a beautiful wedding gown and held the well-kept old pair of shoes gently in her hands. Maria ran her fingers over the shoes, turning them over and examining them carefully. She then picked up her tools, replaced the old lace with a brand new one, and restitched the shoes from scratch. She worked with incredible care, making sure every stitch was perfectly aligned. Once she finished, she handed the shoes back to Miriam and wrote on her notebook. Maria, you didn't just fix a pair of shoes. You mended our precious memories. The bride slipped the vintage pink shoes onto her white wedding dress. The soft pink shoes peeped out under the pure white gown, and the new laces held steady as she walked. He carried a notebook full of dense, detailed notes recording every single repair step. Maria took on her very first apprentice. He didn't find her through the app. Sophia was the one who connected them. During her hospital clinical rotation, Sophia met a young man named Martin who'd just gotten a cochlear implant surgery. Martin was 21 years old. He'd lived with severe hearing loss his whole life and couldn't land a steady job after high school. My mom's a shoe repair person, and she's deaf too. She might be willing to teach you the trade. Martin showed up at the booth, absolutely overcome with nerves. He just stood frozen, unsure what to do with his hands.
What are you scared of?
Martin read those words, and tears started rolling down his cheeks. Starting that day, Martin came to the shoe booth every single day. Maria walked him through everything, identifying every repair tool, proper stitching techniques, and how to pick the right adhesive for different shoe soles. Martin picked up skills slowly, yet he was incredibly diligent. He carried a notebook full of dense, detailed notes recording every single repair step. A month later, Martin finished repairing his first shoe pair, a set of sneakers with split soles. He put in 4 uneven, crooked stitches. Maria stared at the work for 3 seconds flat, grabbed her scissors, cut all the threads loose, and gestured for him to redo it. He stitched 4 new times, but the lines still came out crooked. Maria cut the stitches out a second time. On his third try, the stitches turned out straight at last. Maria wrote 2 simple words on the notebook. Martin broke into a bright, childish grin. It was beautifully reimagined. The flaw turned into a little star. On the day Martin finished his apprenticeship, Maria let him take his very first solo customer order. An elderly man brought in a pair of leather dress shoes with a gnawed hole torn into the upper by his dog.
My son gave me these shoes. He's deployed in the military and rarely gets to come home. I want them fixed up for when he visits next time.
Martin stared at the damaged hole, unsure if he could fix it right. He glanced over toward Maria for guidance. Maria wouldn't meet his gaze. She kept her head down working on another shoe, yet her hands paused mid-motion for a split second. Martin got the message loud and clear. She was waiting for him to step up and make the call himself. He picked up his needle and thread and got to work. He moved extremely slowly, second-guessing every single stitch. By his 5th stitch, his shaky hands finally steadied up. On the 9th stitch, he fell into a smooth, natural rhythm. When he reached the 11th stitch, a small smile tugged at his lips. Once he tied off the final stitch, he handed the repaired shoe over to Maria for inspection. Maria picked up the shoe and turned it over to examine every angle 3 full times. Then she wrote on her tablet. Tears streamed down Martin's face, and Maria teared up too. The two shared a hug, the very first time Maria had ever embraced someone outside her family. When the old man returned to pick up his shoes, he saw the chewed hole stitched into a tiny, neat star shape. It wasn't just covered up. It was beautifully reimagined. The flaw turned into a little star.
Who fixed these shoes for me?
I gestured over to Martin to introduce him.
Son, you've got a real trade now. You'll never have to worry about going hungry.
Once Martin got home that night, he sent a text message to his mom. His mother called him right away, sobbing through the whole conversation. These craftspeople were spread out across every Boston neighborhood. Martin became the app's most enthusiastic advocate. He headed to Boston's Disability Employment Services Center with his phone in hand, walking the staff through exactly how the app works. The staff then passed the word along to dozens more job seekers with disabilities. Within a single month, Silent Craft gained over 20 new registered users. They covered all kinds of trades: shoe repair, bike maintenance, cell phone fixing, key cutting, and clothing alterations. These craftspeople were spread out across every Boston neighborhood. Some ran street booths, while others took orders straight from their homes. Martin posted updates on social media every single day, sharing the real-life stories of these new creators. His posts were plain-spoken and genuine, no overly dramatic wording. Martin replied to the comment, "This isn't my work, it's Maria's. She's the one who taught me that being deaf isn't a disability, it's just a different way of communicating." I spotted his reply, took a screenshot, and showed it to Maria. She read it over and wrote on her tablet. Right underneath that line, she added another sentence, "I'm the one who told him that." The two of them just sat there together, in complete silence. Boston's newly inaugurated mayor, Michelle Wu, was scheduled for an inspection tour down Grant Street. Her entire itinerary was coordinated by the city council. Councilor O'Brien specifically added Maria's street booth to her official visiting stops. Early that morning, I helped Maria tidy up her booth spotless. We organized all the tools neatly, polished the glass panels, and watered the small potted plants out front. Maria changed into a new blue blouser and braided her hair neatly and tightly. Soon enough, the event coordinator arrived. She was in her 30s, dressed in a relaxed business blazer. She had no entourage with her, only a single photographer accompanying her. She walked up to the booth, knelt down, and leveled her gaze to meet Maria's eyes. She didn't speak a word, fully aware that Maria couldn't hear her. Instead, she pulled out her phone, typed a message, and showed it. "May I sit here for a while?" Maria nodded gently in response. The mayor sat down on the small stool, facing Maria directly. Maria poured her a cup of water. The two of them just sat there together, in complete silence. Onlookers watched on, puzzled by the quiet scene. A mayor sitting face to face in silence with a deaf shoemaker. After 10 minutes of quiet stillness, the mayor stood up. She pulled out her phone again and typed. Maria wrote on her tablet, "Quietness lets me focus on my work." The mayor typed back, "You do excellent work." After that, she took her leave. The next day, she posted a photo on her Twitter account. It captured her and Maria sitting face to face, both with their heads slightly lowered in quiet stillness.
Maria, what would you like to say to viewers all across America?
Producers from NBC's Today Show reached out to me, wanting to interview Maria.
Emily, your story has gotten national attention across the country. We'd love to fly Maria out to New York for an in-studio interview.
She can't speak verbally.
We can use her writing board or bring a sign language interpreter for the segment.
I passed the interview offer along to Maria. She thought it over for a long time before writing. I wrote back to her, "I'll come with you the whole time." Then she added another line. Sophia has to come too. Sophia had already graduated by then and worked at a local Boston hospital. She took 2 days off work to travel to New York alongside Maria. Inside the studio, host Savannah sat right next to Maria and skipped the formal opening questions. She simply asked gently,
Maria, what would you like to say to viewers all across America?
Maria lifted up her white writing board high. The words on it read clear. The entire studio fell silent for a full 5 seconds before erupting into warm, loud applause.
You're absolutely right. You're not just a story, you're our neighbor.
Once the episode aired nationwide, Silent Craft gained 5,000 new downloads overnight.
But this is the most meaningful work I've ever done.
After the Today Show aired, people from all over the country started reaching out to us. A deaf shoemaker in Ohio deployed the app on his own and rebranded it as Silent Shoes. A hard-of-hearing tailor in Texas built a customized fork version named Silent Stitch. A visually impaired massage therapist in Seattle asked Benjamin to help build a voice-accessible version of the platform. Every night, Benjamin stayed up chatting with these independent developers on GitHub. He did his best to explain coding logic in his broken English, never giving up on communicating clearly.
Aren't you tired?
I am tired, but this is the most meaningful work I've ever done.
More meaningful than the social media app you built at your old company?
That old app got people addicted. This one helps people work and build real lives.
I looked straight into his eyes. He used to be gloomy and withdrawn, always keeping his head down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. But in that moment, he held his head high, and his eyes were shining bright. Silent Craft had been forked over 300 times on GitHub. Its official documentation was available in 7 different languages. Developers from 13 countries around the world had contributed to its code base. Maria had no idea what GitHub was, but she knew one thing for sure. Her app was now helping people all across the nation. Just a single line. One day while I was helping Maria tidy up her shoe booth, I found an old metal tin box tucked all the way at the back of a tool cabinet. I lifted the lid and found a stack of letters inside. They weren't notes people sent her. They were letters she'd written to others, none of them ever mailed out. The first letter was addressed to her father. The second one was for her husband, Carlos. The third letter was to Sophia, her daughter. At the very bottom laid a letter with no name written on it, just a single line. My hands shook as I held that letter in my grasp. I turned to Maria and wrote her a question. Why were none of these letters ever sent? She wrote back on her tablet. Who would I send them to? They don't have an address anymore. My dad passed away, Carlos is gone, and Sophia was right here with me. What about the last one, the one that says, I wish people could hear me? Who was that meant for? She stared at the words for a long moment, then scribbled down an answer. I closed the metal tin tightly and put it back where I'd found it in the cabinet. Maria, people hear you now. The whole country hears your voice. She replied simply, I know. That's why I don't write these hidden letters anymore. Now I write replies to people on the app. Her first round of funding came from an anonymous donor who gave $100,000. Sophia quit her hospital job to work full-time as an employment counselor for people with disabilities. Mom, I'm leaving the hospital. I want to work alongside you and help everyone who's going through the same things you are. Maria stared at her daughter for a moment, didn't write anything down, and simply nodded her head. Sophia started a nonprofit organization named Silent Bridge, which stands for a bridge built for silent voices. Her job was to assist disabled small business owners across Boston in using Silent Craft, training them to take orders, track bookings, and resolve customer complaints. Her first round of funding came from an anonymous donor who gave $100,000. I found out later the secret donor was Mayor Michelle Wu, who donated the money out of her own salary. Sophia and her team rode their bikes all through Boston's neighborhoods and side streets every day. Their backpacks were stuffed with tablets, portable chargers, and writing boards for communication. Whenever they came across a disabled street vendor, they'd stop, kneel down beside them, and walk them through how to operate the app step by step. Within just 3 months, they'd given support to 87 people total. There was an elderly woman in her 70s with hearing loss who'd fixed toys out of her basement for 20 whole years. Sophia set up the app on her device and helped her receive her very first customer order. The old lady repaired a teddy bear, and when she shipped it out, the customer's order note read,
I've mended toys for 20 years, and no one's ever thanked me out loud before. I could never hear it.
But now she gets to read those words of thanks right there on the app. She simply nodded her head, and Martin recognized that quiet gesture as full approval. Martin made up his mind to open his own repair stall, separate from Maria's booth, all on his own. He rented a tiny booth next to a neighborhood park in South Bruston for $200 a month. He painted the whole booth the exact same shade of blue as Maria's repair stand. A hand-painted wooden sign hung out front that read, Martin's Shoe Repair, Apprentice of Maria. Maria showed up on opening day with nothing in her hands, no repair tools at all. She stepped inside the booth and glanced over how Martin had laid out all his gear. His hammer sat on the right, the thread box on the left, and all the glue bottles lined up on the shelf. She simply nodded her head, and Martin recognized that quiet gesture as full approval. Martin wrote on his tablet, Thank you, Master. Maria jatted back, Do good, honest work, and don't let me down. Martin replied, I won't. Maria turned to leave, but after a few steps she paused and looked back toward the booth. She wrote out a long note. Martin taped that handwritten note to the inside wall of his booth. Every single night when he closed up shop, he'd stop and read it all over again. Maria stared at the words, and tears dropped down onto the cake's surface. For Thanksgiving, Sophia cooked a whole feast at her place. She shut down Maria's shoe booth for the day and invited everyone over. Martin, me, Benjamin, Sarah, plus several disabled folks she'd helped through Silent Bridge. Maria never learned how to cook. It's not that she couldn't, she just never had the time. She spent every single day repairing shoes. Mom, you don't have to lift a finger today. Just sit back and relax. Maria sat at the dining table and watched Sophia dart around the kitchen. She'd never gotten to see her daughter cook a full meal like this before. Sophia made roast turkey, creamy mashed potatoes, and pumpkin pie. She set a pat of butter on top of the potatoes. As it melted, it oozed out like a tiny volcano.
Sophia, your mashed potatoes are way better than your mom's. Don't tell her I said that.
Maria noticed us laughing and smiled right along with us. She couldn't hear our conversation, but she shared our joy anyway. After dinner, Sophia brought out a cake topped with lit candles. It wasn't a birthday cake. It was a special Thanksgiving cake. She'd written a message on the frosting. Thank you, Mom. Maria stared at the words, and tears dropped down onto the cake's surface.
Mom, have a slice of cake.
Maria took up a bite, then scribbled one word on her tablet. Sweet. Sweet like your life? Maria wrote back, My life hasn't always been sweet, but the ending sure is.
When she was 5, she said one single word, Ben. My name.
Benjamin had never told anyone about his family. On Thanksgiving night, after 2 glasses of red wine, he opened up out of nowhere.
My sister's name is Kate. She was diagnosed with autism when she turned 3. The doctor said she'd never develop speech, that she might never talk at all.
Did she ever speak?
She did. When she was 5, she said one single word, Ben. My name.
Tears welled up in Benjamin's eyes.
She can only say a handful of words to this day, but she's an amazing artist. She communicates with people through her drawings.
That's just like Maria writing everything down to talk to people.
Exactly. That's why I knew I had to build Maria's app. If Kate ever wants to run a small business of her own someday, I want there to be a tool out there for her too.
Does your sister know what you've been working on?
She knows. I told her all about it. She drew me a picture as a gift.
The handwriting was messy and uneven, yet the whole piece felt incredibly beautiful.
Mom!
Maria fell ill one winter. It was nothing serious, just a bad case of the flu. But since she's deaf and nonverbal, she couldn't communicate her symptoms. She couldn't tell anyone her throat hurt, and she had no way to realize she had a fever. She ended up collapsing inside her booth one day. Martin was the one who found her. He'd stopped by to ask Maria a question and spotted her slumped over her work table, her face ashen. He touched her forehead, and it was burning hot. Martin dialed 911 right away, and Maria was rushed to the hospital. Sophia worked at this hospital and was pulling an overnight shift when the call came. She sprinted down 3 flights of stairs and burst into the ER, where she found Maria lying on a hospital bed with an oxygen tube.
Mom!
Maria didn't respond to her voice. Her eyes stayed shut, her skin pale. Sophia grabbed her hand, and Maria's palm felt ice cold.
Mom, please wake up.
The doctor said it was just the flu worsened by extreme exhaustion, and she needed a full week of rest. Sophia checked her mother into a hospital room, took time off work, and stayed by her side for 3 whole days. Martin showed up the day Maria was discharged. He brought a cheap bouquet from the grocery store and set it on her tool cart. Scrawled on the wrapping paper was a note, "Master, I took 12 repair orders while you had gone. Every single one is finished." Maria read the note, then wrote on her tablet, "You did good work. But don't store my glue on the top shelf. It'll dry out fast." Martin broke into a grin.
You fix my shoes, I knit your socks. Seems fair to me.
Maria's booth had a heater inside, but the walkway out front was treacherous. Every morning when I headed out, Maria was already out shoveling. She'd clear every bit of snow in front of her stall and spread de-icing salt, not for her own sake, but for her customers. "What time do you get up to shovel snow?" I wrote on my tablet. 5 o'clock, she wrote back. "That's way too early." "It's not too early. Elderly folks walk slowly and the snow makes everything slippery." Those words stuck with me for a long time. She fixed shoes for a living, yet she tended to the paths for everyone. She shoveled snow, but what she was really clearing was a safe way for people to pass. One day an elderly woman came to get her shoes repaired. She stepped steadily across the clear path Maria had shoveled. Once her shoes were fixed, she pulled a cloth bag out of her purse holding a pair of hand-knit wool socks.
I knitted these myself, they're for you. Your feet must get freezing out here.
Maria took the socks and examined them. She slipped off her own shoes and pulled the socks on. They were sized small for men, but the blue and gray striped pattern looked lovely. She scribbled on her writing pad, "Warm. Thank you."
You fix my shoes, I knit your socks. Seems fair to me.
Maria shook her head and wrote, "It's not fair. I charge money for shoe repairs, but you gave me socks for nothing."
How about you don't charge me for repairs next time then?
Maria broke into a smile and wrote, "Deal." They shook hands. An 80-something woman and a 60-year-old deaf shoemaker, both grinning from ear to ear. Benjamin got an email all the way from Kenya. The sender was a young man named James, who taught computer science at a university in Nairobi. He wrote. Benjamin wrote him back right away. James and his students spent a full month customizing Silentcraft to fit Kenya's local needs. They swapped in regional language packs, integrated local payment services, and even built an offline mode, since steady internet access isn't available for everyone there. James sent over a photo to show us progress. In the picture, more than 20 deaf tailors sat lined up at long tables inside a community center, each holding a phone pulled up to Silentcraft's order dashboard, learning how to accept work requests. Maria stared at the photo, then wrote a question on her tablet for me.
I jotted down the answer. Africa, Kenya. She wrote another line. Do they fix shoes too? I forwarded Maria's words straight to James. He wrote back quickly.
"Thank you for letting me stay. I'm not going anywhere. It's been 1 full year since Maria's booth was saved." Sophia put together a tiny little celebration at the community center. The crowd was small, but everyone there was part of this journey. Maria made a huge pot of beef stew. It wasn't something she knew how to cook, but she practiced for an entire week. The beef was falabark tender and absolutely delicious. Everyone brought something to share. I brought wine. Benjamin showed up with a cake decorated with the word silent craft. Martin brought a pair of shoes he'd fixed and set them on the table as a decoration. Sarah brought a bouquet of flowers. Even my boss David came, carrying a whole case of beer. Patricia, the head of the community council, stood up to speak. A year ago, Emily walked into our meeting and told us a deaf soapmaker downstairs was getting kicked out. We all laughed that day, not at her, but at ourselves. We walked past that booth every single day, yet we never once stopped to notice. Maria, you taught us all a valuable lesson. You taught us to slow down, to pause and pay attention. The person you pass by every day might be doing something truly extraordinary. Maria stood up slowly and held up her whiteboard. This time, the words read, "Thank you for letting me stay. I'm not going anywhere." The room erupted in applause. I sat in the corner, watching it all unfold. I thought back to a year ago, the yellow eviction notice, and all the uncertainty back then. But she knows now. She finally knows she belongs here. I thought back to the first words she ever wrote to me. "My name's Emily Carter. I'm 32 and I work as a product manager." Maria's shoe tell is still downstairs. Every single morning on my way to work, she's right there. I can't hear the hammer tapping, but I can see every steady thud of her hands at work. She doesn't keep her head buried down anymore. When she spots me walking by, she'll lift her head, flash a quick smile, and get back to her repairs. The walls inside her booth are covered wall to wall with photos. Sophia's graduation portrait, the very first pair of shoes Martin fixed alone, photos from the mayor's visit, the NBC News interview, snapshots of the deaf tailors in Kenya, and that old whiteboard that reads, "My daughter, college student." Silent Craft's up to its 7th major update now. Over 800 disabled small business owners across 32 U.S. states rely on it. The Kenyan localized version supports more than 400 local artisans. Benjamin's currently partnering with a team in India to build a Hindi language edition. Sophia's Silent Bridge is officially a registered nonprofit now. She's hired 3 full-time staff members, and their outreach has grown beyond Boston to cover all of Massachusetts. She says her long-term goal is to expand services to every state in the country. Martin's independent shoe stall has been open for 6 months straight. He's built a regular customer base, and he even took on an apprentice, a 17-year-old high school student with hearing loss who doesn't want to go to college and wants to learn a hands-on trade. Martin told the kid,
You came to the right person. My master's the best there is.
Maria's fully recovered from her bad cold and is back at her booth, working dawn till dawn every day. She got a brand new writing tablet. The old one's completely filled up, so she stowed it away in her metal tin box, alongside all those unsent letters she wrote years ago. This morning, I walked past the stall again. Maria was restoring an old leather dress shoe, its upper faded pale from years of wear and the sole worn thin. She looked up, smiled at me, then gestured toward the brand new sign hanging out front of her booth. I stood there in front of that sign and stared at it for a long, long time. I thought back to the first words she ever wrote to me. I've watched you for 3 years. And now, I've watched her for a full year too. It's not just passing by anymore, it's truly seeing her. Downstairs lives a shoemaker. She can't speak out loud, but her hands have told her story for 30 years, her thread and needles for 30 years, her app for 2 years, and her apprentices will carry that story forward for lifetimes to come. The sound of the hammer still echoes every day. You can't hear it, but you can see every bit of it.